Thank you for watching. My name's Glen Morgan, and this is We the Governed. So today's subject on this video is going to be what happens, really, when political insiders are caught breaking the law. So there's no doubt that they broke the law and they get caught. What actually happens? And that is going to be the subject for today. We're going to go through 3 different cases that have recently been resolved in Washington State, and you get a chance to see what those outcomes and consequences really are. Now, the first thing, before I jump into that, I just want to remind you, if you haven't done so already, please go down below and hit the subscribe and like button if you like the content that we have here. And of course, if you can think about it also, try to share this video with others, because it's a good way just to get the word out to other people who care about what's going on in Washington State and elsewhere. But let's go back to consequences for those who break the law. Now, there's kind of a scene, and it's one that my friends and I will oftentimes bring up when we're talking about just the consequences in government, and it has to do with and you probably didn't see this movie, but there's Team America, World Police. There was this famous scene in this where Hans Blix, who supposedly with the United Nations, comes in and confronts the dictator of North Korea, and he says, hey, you haven't cooperated with our nuclear inspection routine, and there's going to be consequences for you. And the dictator character basically says, oh, really? What type of consequences? And he says, we're going to be very, very angry, and then we're going to write a letter telling you just how angry we really are. Well, of course, the funny thing about all this was that after he did that, the only thing that happened to him was he was fed to the sharks. And it's kind of a funny scene in the movie because it just illustrates the silliness sometimes of any consequences really happening to truly bad actors when they get caught doing bad things out there. Now, how does that apply to what we're talking about today? Well, I've done a few videos recently about some variety of lawbreakers that I've caught in Washington State, and I thought it would be worthwhile to go back and revisit those situations here. The first one I'm going to talk about here is this PDC enforcement case 170455, and again, I'll link to source documents down below, and you can look it up for yourself. And this is where I caught Senator Tawana Nobles, who out of the 28th Legislative District, and that's kind of southwest Pierce County, where she very clearly and unambiguously could try to deceive the public and hide the fact that she had over $100,000 of student debt, and she concealed it from her financial disclosure documents. Now, this was over $100,000, and she also concealed the fact that not only did she have that, but that somehow, mysteriously, it was forgiven. And this despite the fact that she had, and the reason why we even know this is because she went out on her social media account here, and she exposed it on her Instagram page, but of course she didn't bother to actually file the fact that she was in that debt and that somebody mysteriously forgave those loans. Now, of course, it raised the additional question is exactly what kind of student loan program exists out there that they're basically forgiving student loans that you're making somewhere between $230,000 to $450,000 that she admits to be being as income on her financial disclosure documents, and you can see them right here. And yet somehow she's the person that actually has her loans forgiven, whereas I guarantee there are thousands of people probably ultimately watching this video right now who have student loans and you never made this much money and nobody forgave your student loans. So the question is, she was caught breaking the law, and it is unambiguous that she was caught breaking the law. In fact, the Public Disclosure Commission agreed with me in my assessment that that was a law-breaking event, and it's documented right here with their Hans Blix naughty letter that they sent out to Senator Nobles here just a few weeks ago, saying that you've been officially warned and sanctioned for your law-breaking, but there will be no other consequences other than this naughty letter that we're going to send to you from the Public Disclosure Commission. And if you break the law again, just maybe it's possible that we may actually have even more serious consequences than this naughty letter right here. Nevertheless, she was caught. My complaint was valid, and there is no doubt that she was a lawbreaker and probably continues to be so today. But of course, if you are a political insider, this is about how much trouble oftentimes that you're going to get into when you're caught breaking the law. Of course, she's not alone. Let's jump into the next case here that is sort of different than this, but if you want to look at some of these, by the way, just go down below. You're going to see the links. I'll send the links directly to the Public Disclosure Commission site and some of the other source documents that I'm referencing throughout this video. But the other one, and I did a video on this I think a little while ago, this is case number 163157, and this was against the Jefferson County Democratic Party. This is their PAC that they run, and there was a lot lot of money that was basically the true source of this funds were concealed. And this complaint, I had talked about it a while ago. Essentially, they had concealed over $85,000 in anonymous contributions in 2024, just recently. Some of it they called campaign headquarters cash. And it's essentially a way to deceive the public and to conceal from the public where the true source of that money comes from. And this allows you to take very large contributions from people who mostly want to be anonymous, and who can blame them? You don't want to be associated with Jefferson County Democrats any more than you have to. And it was a way for them to essentially launder close to $100,000. Now, obviously, they were very angry when they got caught. They were upset that anybody dared to question them. But that's the nature of being an activist and actually digging into the truth in the documents that these guys are filing. And the Public Disclosure Commission also ruled on this. And this right here, and I'll link to it down below, this is the naughty, naughty letter that the Jefferson County Democrats got, saying that absolutely there's no doubt about it. They broke the law, and they clearly broke the law with most of their policies and the way they ran their fundraising operations here. It's clearly illegal, no doubt about it, but they're just going to get officially sanctioned and warned by the Public Disclosure Commission with their Hans Blix letter here saying, do go and sin no more. Now, obviously, that's the equivalent of a wrist slap. It isn't going to do much in the sense of be any serious consequence to them or really serve as any kind of a warning to anybody else to not break the law. But that's what happened. There's no doubt that the complaint was valid, and I was correct. My concern with this particular one, though, is that the Public Disclosure Commission, in making decisions like this with this type of fact pattern, is actually encouraging money laundering on a much bigger scale, which we know already goes on. You've seen some of the discussions that we've had on this channel before about Act Blues, basically fronting essentially a money laundering operation through their nationwide program, and we've talked about that in some of these other videos. Historically, we haven't seen that type of behavior at the state level where it's reported to the Public Disclosure Commission, but unfortunately, this type of decision will encourage this behavior moving forward, and I find this to generally only be done on the Democrat side, where they're inventing generic sources of funds, low-cost fundraisers or other things for PACs that allow them to kind of bring in cash and just conceal the true source of where the money comes from. Third case that I'm going to talk about today is one that I didn't file, but it was one that was resolved recently by the Public Disclosure Commission, and this is PDC Enforcement Case 163092, and this is against one of the SEIU union PACs, 1199 in this case. And this was a complaint that was actually filed by Let's Go Washington. And the basic core gist of this complaint is the fact that SEIU concealed almost $500,000 during their campaign, attacking the initiatives that Let's Go Washington was running at the time. There was a massive amount of money that was thrown at that, and a lot of it was concealed until after the election, including the $500,000 that this complaint addresses here. Now, keep in mind, there's absolutely no doubt, unambiguous, the violations were clear and obvious here. And so the Public Disclosure Commission ultimately signed a statement. It's a settlement, basically, a statement of understanding. It's a legal agreement where they basically were fined $6,000. I'll link to it down below, for concealment of this $500,000 during the political campaign and then revealing it long after the election was over. Now, at least that's a fine. It's a relatively small one, and for SEIU, I doubt that's even the size of their coffee budget for a weekend meeting. But nevertheless, they were fined, and so there were some sorts of consequences for them. They do break the law pretty much every time they get involved in a political action event or a committee of any kind, so they're fertile grounds for lots of complaints and violations, and it could be that that's why they decided to go just a little bit above a wrist slap and impose the equivalent of a small parking fee on a multi-million-dollar PAC like this. But that's an example, again, of an insider political group getting some minor consequences for their law breaking. Now, obviously, they still get mad at me and anybody else who dares to actually look at them when we're exposing all these other groups. You can see the hundreds and hundreds of politicians and PACs, judges, and others that I've caught breaking the law in Washington State, many of whom have been fined. Sometimes they may appear to be small fines, but nevertheless, those things add up, and it definitely is a clear roadmap and documentation of law breaking, pretty widespread in our state, and I'm sure that I've got a lot more to go. And that's, if you want to see more of that, you can actually look at it down below. Now, of course, even if all they do is send out Hans Blix letters and minor wrist slaps, we are going to be watching. And I think that it's important for you and I to realize we should continue to watch, because documenting the lawbreaking is helpful, even if it's just to document the hypocrisy and the double standard that exists within these agencies, where they typically will punish small people and just people who are not on the correct political side, or at least politically correct side of things. And they will punish you with immense suffering and costs, and at the same time basically do very little if they're a political insider, if the violator is a political insider or part of the Democrat Party's ruling class. It's just worth knowing that. But if you want to learn how to do this as well, and you want to be more engaged in exposing the truth in Washington State, feel free to join us in our next Washington State Doge training sessions. I'm doing them all over the state. I've done many already. I'll link to an article that was recently done about one of these training sessions that I had up in Skagit County. But I guarantee you, if you live somewhere in Washington State, I'll be doing more of these all around the state. Inevitably, one of them is probably close enough to you that you can probably get to it. And I'm happy to teach you how to look and catch these guys when they're breaking the law, whether it's campaign finance laws, ethics laws, or just stealing money or wasting money in your community. Either way, it's worth learning how to do this, and I'd encourage you to come to these training classes, and I'd encourage you to be involved in exposing the truth and sharing that truth widely with others. It's the only way we can make an impact, and even if it doesn't seem like it's a big enough impact at the time, I think cumulatively over time it does add up and it makes a difference. But the only way you can do that is if you're willing to show up, and the future inevitably belongs to those who show up.